Preparing for Success. This is our second session. So in the first session, we took a look at the idea of how our brain works, and we took a look at what we can do to help encourage the retention from the sensory bin to the short-term memory to our long-term memory. So here what we want to do is we want to take a look at the memory principles and how to make that connection and make that work. Remembering that the active portion of the learning is what we need to sort of get to. Okay, so memory principles and how to apply them. If we take a look at these four things, in the big picture, we're going to take a look at the making an effort. Making an effort to learn is one of our biggest things. The old saying, whether you say you can or you can't, you're going to be right. If you choose to say I can't learn this, you won't. If you say I can learn this and you make an effort to learn it, you have a much higher success rate. So the self-fulfilling prophecy, we have to make that effort. Second thing, you work to your strengths, visualizations, associations, recitations. There's a bunch of things in there that we can look at. Time that you're spending on that. The distributed practice versus consolidation. You're going to find that a lot of the lessons that I do cover a lot of things, and it sounds like I'm repeating myself because I'm a senile old man. And yes, that's also true. However, there is a method to the madness as well, because sometimes repetition is going to be the key for that as well. So, and in different ways that we can sort of explain this can really help. So time. How are we going to use our time well? And control the amount and form of the information. We live in an age of information overload. And in turn, what ends up happening is we turn off the learning and we start applying the colloquial sayings. We start looking at what people have said. We start going to Bob's uncle's cousin said this and did that. We're not looking at real information anymore. We're just doing hearsay. So we got to be very selective in what we're going to be using, and we're going to try and make sure that we're organized in our fashion. So those are some things that we're going to look at in the big picture here. So in the course of this presentation. Under the make an effort, interest, try and find a way to be interested. It may take a little bit. Your instructors, that's kind of one of their selling jobs, or the jobs to do is to sell you on that, because it really makes it easier to learn when you have an interest in there. The intent, what is the purpose of this? What are we doing this for? Why? And the background, to put a context into it. A lot of people say that there's a lot of fluff and stuff inside of the modules and the textbooks and stuff. I agree. But they're there for a reason. Imagine just reading nothing but statistical evidence and just math equations without a reason or anything to do with it. Okay, it would be awful. So making sure that we can take a look at that background to take a look. One of the key elements of adult learning is about making it relatable. And we all do this. So you learn something and you attach it to something you've already learned. And so that's an important concept, except we need to make sure that what we're relating it to is right and it fits and we're correct in it. Strengths, recitation, visualization, association. We're going to look at all of these things in the course of this presentation. Okay, when we look at our memory skills, I'm just going to shift that over. When we look at our memory skills, we're going to take a look at how to try and make something out of nothing, almost. When you're given a long list of things, like say to memorize or whatever, it really is hard if you're just memorize randomness. So when we take a look at this here list, we have everything's in there. But we can also take a look at that there's different ways to categorize this. We have different types of tools. We have measuring instruments and we have drawing stuff. We have hand saws and we have hand tools. We have power tools. So there's different ways to categorize that. So we can take a look at how we can put those things into a more relatable way for us to be able to visualize and to be able to memorize. So when we look at this, hand tools, measuring tools, power tools, eh, we can now make it easier for us to be able to now pull those things out. Going back one slide here, out of the number of things, when I would do this presentation in, like, before a start of every intake when I worked at SAIT, we'd have hundreds of new apprentices that would be taking this in all apprenticeship categories, from culinary arts, hairdressing, and construction trades. And we would take a look at this list, and I would give them 30 seconds to look at this list, and then I would give them 30 seconds to drop it onto a piece of paper and then turn it in. And most people got like two or three at most. Some people were able to do it, but the people that were able to do it were the ones that were able to categorize them. There are about 3% of our population, which is known to be the where they have photographic memory. Most people don't. 3% of our population. Some people say they do, but 3% of our population in total has it. So it's not very likely, but it's possible. Okay, most of us don't. So we got to figure out some other way. When we make our study notes, this is how we want to try and look at this. This is kind of really why we're trying to pull this out, because we can sometimes see some randomness, especially when it comes to like code or whatever. It now looks, it's hard. It's almost impossible to be able to recall all of that information unless we do something like this. When we look at something like this, let's think about how we do and we memorize like license plates, for example. If you were able to just drive down and we take a look at a long string of numbers, this is just impossible. But look at it very closely, and you're going to see some combinations. IRS, YMCA, IBM, KGB, FBI. Now, these were intentionally put together like this for this very purpose, but it's a lot easier for us to be able to pick things out. When we read license plates, we can RFX 952 was my very first license plate when I lived in Alberta. And I had a red car and I called it Red Fox 958. And so I will remember that license plate probably for the rest of my life, because I was able to sort of, and I just named my car Red Fox. Like it was crazy. It was a Z22, like it was a Cavalier. I don't know why I named it, but it allowed me to remember that license plate. I never had to go and take a picture of it and go into the hotel. I just knew it. The brain begins to pick out the pieces that it's seen before. It picks out memorizable and logical pieces. So it's able to put that stuff back together. I'm sure you guys have seen this technique used before, and maybe you already have employed it. It's a technique. So going back to this memory principles. Okay, the strengths: recitation, visualization, and association. And that's what we were just looking at. Recitation, saying it again and again, or just talking out loud to yourself. It really helps. And the other thing that happens when you recite the strengths is that it starts to formulate in your brain. It starts to make connections. It starts to analyze. Instead of it, Ohm's law being math, it starts to take a look at I equals E over R. I is the result of the voltage force pushing that through that resistance. Here's what's left. It starts to help you see that logical path. Visualization, making sure that we can see that. And association. When we look at memorization, recitation, all of that stuff, it really helps to use flashcards. Flashcards are a crazy amazing tool. And I wish that I knew about this technique when I was a student, at least when I was a student in my apprenticeship training. I remember just spending hours when I went through motors and stuff like that in electronics, just memorizing and memorizing and memorizing. And I did it through the textbook. And then I see my students now in the colleges, and I see the top students, and what is their technique? Flashcards. Somebody has talked to them about the flashcards before I had a chance to talk to them about it, because I saw their success. And it's not just in what I've seen, it's all over the place. You will find that is a tremendous success. So flashcards really work. Write something very simple, and we're just going to spend a few slides here taking a look at some options. Okay, simple question on the front, simple answers on the back. Flashcards can be used to check your learning, so a little test, a test of your overall learning, just to make sure you knew what you were supposed to learn. Review of your information. So this is now talking about your daily, monthly, or daily, weekly, even monthly testing or studying, and test your overall knowledge of that subject. Okay, and we'll take a look at a couple more techniques using these things too. There are some online or some apps, phone-based apps, but I would recommend against those because they're not as effective as the actual physical flashcard, like the recipe cards that you can buy. You get them at a dollar store, Staples, Walmart, whatever. They're really simple, and the thing that's really cool about those is that they're, I mean, you can't bring them into an exam, I guess, but nobody's going to freak out with a flashcard as opposed to you having your phone in some sensitive areas, especially in exam rooms. The flashcards can kind of go in there in your pocket with you. Don't take them out while you're there, but you can have them with you until the bitter end. So when you are making your flashcards, make them with a purpose. Be very selective and specific. You don't want to draw out long paragraphs or lengthy things. All you want is to get to that point. Keep your cards simple. No more than 3 points. In fact, try to keep it to one single point if you can per card. But sometimes you're going to need to have a little bit more, the cascading effect. Sometimes that's what you're testing yourself on. Use key terms, definitions, formula, and summarized information is what they're ultimately best for. This is where our brains have a hard time in remembering. Again, I talk about like the motors and the motor parts, the motor parameters, the slip and the torque and all of that type of stuff. My memory sucks. And so I really always had to work at that to try and make sure that I was okay in the exams. And I would nail the exams, but that was because I put in a ton of work. I would spend hours at school. You don't have to, okay? As long as we can summarize that and go through some proper techniques here. When you make your cards, the 3x5 sheets are what I would recommend the best. Punch a hole in the top corner. Okay, it doesn't matter which corner, but a top corner, and stay consistent with each one, because when you do that, you can bundle them with like a little keychain or a carabiner or something like that, and you can bundle a few of them together. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, about how many you can group together, but then they kind of stay with you as your kind of like good luck charm. Okay, you can put them on your keychain, whatever, but it stays with you, and you can just kind of cycle through and test yourself like anytime you have a minute. It's easy. Instead of just smoking and joking and no good use of your time, you can make good use of your time. Okay, in the dead times with these. When you are writing your question, write the term, formula, or question on the front of the card. And then on the back, the response of what you would be looking for, you can put that on the other side. And then what you can do is you can use them in two ways. You can start with like a question with the answer on the back, or you could do it like Jeopardy, where it's going to give you the answer and you're going to come up with the question. So you can ask that in two different ways, and now you're going to look at it from front and back. Again, really, really invaluable to make sure that you crack those imperative terms. Formula, man, yeah, huge. So when we look and use these things, shuffle your deck. Maximum number of 7 per, like when I talked about putting them on like a little keychain or some kind of carabiner, about 7 in a time. They don't have to be all grouped together, but 7 in a stack. Ask the questions out loud and answer it out loud. Don't do that in silence. Okay, studying needs to be out loud. Take it to a quiet space if you need to, or just be like that person on the street that's just yelling yourself crazy. Any which way, it's for you. It's a benefit for you. If you are correct, if you're using laminated cards, this is great. Or if you're not, just a little pencil mark. If you place it correct, you're going to now put a little check mark. Or if you get it wrong, put a little X. and focus your attention on the cards with the X's. Okay. Now, when you go through those, and I'll talk about that here now, the rule 5 in 7. Use only 7 cards at a time, and we're doing this on purpose because the more information that you put in there, you're going to be spilling it all over the place. It's like putting too much milk in your cup and you're going to try and carry it, and it's going to be dribbling all over the place. Anybody that's got kids, you know how this goes, right? It's sometimes more or less is more. Where you can actually get to the couch with more milk than you would have had you started out with a big ass full glass. It takes 5 repetitions to make that information stick. Now, anybody that's done sports or anything like that, when you're talking about skills development, they talk about repetition, repetition, repetition. 10,000 repetitions until you can become skilled. It doesn't necessarily need 10,000 repetitions for these things, but it does need enough to be able to stick. The more you give it, the more chance it's going to stick. And if you do this on a daily basis, the studying before an exam is nothing. You won't have to. Okay, it'll be a light breeze because you're doing this a little bit each day. Review all of those cards periodically to ensure that the information crystallizes in your long-term memory. Okay, put the cards to the side once you think you got them, and then every week or something like that, you pick them up and you got different stacks. So just grab a random stack and just test yourself on them all the time. So you're constantly staying fresh. The apprenticeship system run in BC is a little bit troublesome in the way it's laid out. And that just simply means that you cover modules at a time and then you put them away and you don't talk about them again. Not until the very end when you're tested on it. So a 10-week program and what you did in the first week or two, now all of a sudden you don't see for 8 weeks. That's terrible. You think you're good until all of a sudden you're not. Okay, and that's usually on that final exam. And our Red Seal exam is going to be testing you concept questions from level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and your field application. So it's really, really problematic if you do it and you're not doing something like this. So we're taking random stacks and we're constantly reviewing old information and adding that into the new. Okay, so we're bringing the past into the present all the time. When you feel confident that you've memorized certain cards, remove it and place a new one in its place. But don't get rid of those old ones. Those are good for review and just going to put up random stacks afterwards. Okay, but once you feel really comfortable with it, take the old one out, put a new one in there, but keeping 7 in the deck at all times. So that was our flashcards. Now we're going to take a look at the mnemonic devices. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Every good boy deserves fudge. Anybody that's done music. There's a whole bunch of different things that we can look at for those mnemonic things. Just looking at a rhyme to try and keep that information there. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I mean, most tradespeople know this. And I had an apprentice for a number of years. And he was an awesome guy. Really, really good guy. One of my best friends, and he really struggled. And so this is something that he would have to say to himself like every day, literally every day for like 3 years, because it was just something that really, really struggled. He really, really struggled with. He played a lot of hockey and he was an energy guy and got hit a lot. So yeah, whatever it takes, it helped him and he was able to be very functional with a concept that was a struggle for him. Now, this is a little bit outside of our ballpark here with these files for memorization, but it's just, again, just using this as an example of the mnemonic devices: single, double, rasp, curved. Sandra dances rather crudely. So as soon as we do that, Sandra dances rather crudely, single, double, rasp, curved. It makes it easier by just memorizing a line. Okay, it can be cheesy, come up with them, or there's just a ton of them online or whatever if you're not that creative either. I'm not that creative, so I sometimes have to borrow. But every now and again, something will just click into my head as to what works for me for memorizing things. Okay, and I don't know, dog romp. This one here was new to me, but if you were to look at trying to memorize dirt, oil, grease, rust, oxides, mill scale, and paint for, I don't know, I guess welder or auto body or something like that, we could just put that together into one term like this, dog romp, and then every letter here starts with a letter on here. And now when we get into our exam strategy stuff, I'm going to talk about doing a brain dump at the beginning of the exam on the scrap piece of paper that they give you, and you're going to write down your cheat sheet. But you're not bringing a cheat sheet in, you're going to create it while you're there. If you have these mnemonics, you can draw them on that page. And so now you're not even having to worry about that because you just popped it on that page before the exam stress gets to you. So pneumatic devices or mnemonic devices, fantastic tool. Pictures. Now, when we take a look at this one here, blows my mind. I can't see it. It doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know. A lot of people, it seems to make good sense. Remember, with great power comes great current squared times resistance. I don't know, whatever. But a picture says 1,000 words. Ohm never forgot his dying uncle's advice. Okay, so it's now just talking about that resistance, and it's putting it into some sort of cheesy saying. It doesn't matter what it is, it matters that you remember the content. To build a strong memory aid, use word acronyms. They're very helpful. You can also throw those onto the flashcards as well. So before we hop out of this, I'm just going to go back real quickly to this visual here. This is stuff that we're going to take a look at. This is what we looked at in the very first thing in our very first session, but we're going to keep digging at these things the entire time. Our entire study skills sessions are based around all of this. Okay, our organizational and our study skills. We're going to keep coming back at these.